Hello. I recently started to read Jojo's Bizarre Adventure for the first time. Never really had any experience with it before. So I thought I'd give my thoughts on the first two parts, Phantom Blood and Battle Tendency. And I'm currently about halfway through the third part of the story. Um, So my memory has slipped a little bit on these, but I just thought, hey, um, why not just quickly talk about them? Um, and overall, I thought, especially for something that's, really quite old, and basic in a lot of ways, um, it was very enjoyable. Um, First sort of two sections, especially the second one. But there was lots to enjoy about the first one as well. Which I'll be talking about first. So overall, I thought Phantom Blood was it was alright. Um, I think I would give it a pass, I guess. Um, but I did have some issues. I thought it definitely started better than it finished. And maybe that's a bit of a hot take because obviously JoJo's is sort of known for having very good action. At least I think that's what it's known for. That's what I know it for. Um, But I thought that the best part of this story was when Jojo, Jonathan, I guess, Jojo number one, I'll call him, and Dio were children, was probably the best part for me. Just watching Dio try to sort of infiltrate the family, it's a very, I guess it's not an original story, but it's always an interesting story to see. This sort of guy coming in and taking over and trying to root his way into a pre-existing structure like this. And especially it's weird because since it's quite a sort of aristocratic structure, it's almost defensible to a degree. Not specific actions of Dio's, but like the general motivation is um, not necessarily reprehensible. But what he does is reprehensible. They do a good job of making him out to be a real villain from very early into the story. I mean, when he killed the dog, it was kind of a shock. I wasn't expecting it. But then the latter half of this, or what felt like the latter half of this, in the sort of old knight town or whatever, um, didn't work for me very much at all. And I think it's because, especially now that I'm reading part three, the powers in this one are really boring comparatively towards the stands and everything they can do later in the story. Um, yeah, except for maybe the sort of limb freezing stuff, which is only sort of good on the once. Um, I would say powers and stuff in this one didn't interest me at all. And additionally, outside of JoJo 1 and Dio, I wouldn't really say I found many of these characters to be um, interesting. Um, Very lacking in personality, I guess. I don't mind Speedwagon, but he's much more enjoyable in part two. And what's his name? Will Zappelli. Um, Feels like a very forgettable character. Maybe it's just me. I don't know. But I didn't find him particularly enjoyable. And then at the end, when like Straits and the old guy show up, that also I feel like they just came in too late for it to have any impact really, and then Straits therefore didn't have much impact at the beginning of part two either, which I feel like could have been easily amended. Um, I do enjoy the very end though, as much as I don't enjoy all the fighting in the sort of Night Town. The sort of final confrontation on the honeymoon ship is excellent, and it's a really good way to end it. It's a very finalizing decision. You know, their Jojo number one story has ended, and I enjoy that. Um, and I enjoy seeing Dio finally defeated, though of course he isn't finally defeated. Um, but still, very enjoyable ending. And largely, I think, pretty good. But definitely worse than Battle Tendency. This I enjoyed a lot more for a number of reasons. Above all, the characters did feel a lot more consistently interesting. It wasn't just two characters who were interesting, and no offense to Jojo number one, but he's not that interesting, and even Dio wasn't that interesting. They were just, significantly ahead of the game, which is unfortunate. But in part two, I mean, you've just got a very consistent cast, obviously carried by the young Joseph, um, who really uh, is just amazing. He's so charming. Um, he's just so lovely to watch. Um, and also, he's much more creative. I feel like there's a much stronger sense. What's the word? Creativity. It's just more creative. The action in this is a lot more creative, even if the powers aren't necessarily particularly more interesting. They're used a lot better. I think it's clear that I've forgotten the mangaka's name. I feel like a dummy now, but whatever his name is, had a bit of an awakening in part two and actually realized how he could use the ripple and some of these other powers, Caesar's bubble power, and the stuff with Wham as well, using them to full effect. But still, some of these guys are maybe a little forgettable. I can't remember if AC/DC even had any powers sort of specific beyond just being like a strong dude. So that's probably not a good sign. Oh, and there's also the guy in Mexico. That section could have maybe been more interesting, and it also is the start of my biggest problem with this part, with Battle Tendency as a whole. But I'll talk about that in a second. Other characters who are great. Caesar, rest in peace, is a great sort of secondary guy to Jojo number two. Much better than the first Zappelli. But I feel, I don't know if this is a strange thought, but I think he should have been killed by cars. My thinking is, if he was killed by cars, it would make cars feel more like the final threat. He's only sort of the final villain, structurally, because the story says so. Wham has a much more important role in the personal conflict that Jojo number two has, and it would be more even between the two of them had Caesar been killed by cars. And I think that probably would have improved the story a little bit, would have made the finale feel more interesting, because after Wham is beaten in the silly race, I sort of lost interest in the final fight. Um, and speaking of them, Wham is a very enjoyable character. The other two are a little one note, little forgettable, especially AC/DC. Because as I already mentioned, I can't even remember if he has any powers. Oh, he does. He has like. I feel like an idiot now because it just it just popped in my head and it's gone again. But he does have something or other, but I can't remember what it is. But yeah, Wham, I do like him. And the other two are fine. And then of course, probably the best character aside from Jojo himself would be Lisa, who's just very fun, and I like the sort of twist that she is his mother. That was a bit of a surprise, um, but it made a lot of sense, and I enjoyed it um, as a twist. I thought it was good. Um, and Speedwagon is also there, and he's a lot better, but I still thought he was a little forgettable. Um, and then I guess the final character, who I did not enjoy in the slightest, and maybe it's just me, I don't know, but I think it's slightly weird that whatever his name, the Nazi officer, was sort of depicted quite heroically several times. At the beginning of the sort of Mexico section, he's evil, he's clearly evil, but then he has like a sort of self-sacrificing moment, which already feels like a really strange decision. Um, because, you know, oh, there he is. Hold on. What's his name? Rudol. Um, he's a Nazi, you know. He's not just like a regular soldier either. He's a full-on officer. He's fully committed to Nazi views, and they depict him in this quite heroic light, and that is, to me, um, a little off-putting. Um, Obviously, I'm not saying that the manga is like defending Nazis. It definitely isn't. But it does come off a little strange. And then when he comes back as like a cool cyborg and is like, whoa. I really felt that that was unneeded. They could have just had Speedwagon show up at the end, and that was all that was needed. He didn't need to show back up and do all of that. Um, it was very pointless. It felt unneeded. I didn't enjoy his presence in the story at all. Um, but luckily he's not in the best parts. Probably the best part again, not even a fight. Actually, maybe the like chariot race might be the best part. Yeah, but the pillar climbing was a highlight for me. I really enjoyed it in concept and in execution. I thought it was great um, at showing how fast a learner Jojo 2 is and how creative he is, and also at showing how determined Caesar is, which works really well. Um, and that was just all round very strong. And yeah, so I would say Phantom Blood, like a 5 out of 10 maybe. Battle Tendency, maybe a 6. Um, both pretty good. I will make a video on part 3 alone when I finish reading that, because I already have probably twice as many thoughts as these two combined on part 3. Um, yeah, that's all I've got to say, I think. But pretty good. Yeah. Alright. Cool. Goodbye.